Good evening. I'm Pastor Tuck, and I want to welcome you to the Leadership Academy, where we equip the chosen for their assignment. In each episode, I'll be sharing insights and wisdom that God has given me throughout my 22 years of pastoral ministry. My goal is to equip you with the tools necessary to run faster and further, helping you to avoid common pitfalls so that you can make a greater impact for the kingdom. And I want to encourage you to share this broadcast with anyone you know who has been called to leadership, whether they are part of the fivefold ministry or a lay leader and have some other ministry assignment. Because whether you know it or not, if you're a leader, that means someone is following you. Well, in this age of accelerated ministry, growth, and digital exposure, young pastors and leaders are stepping into influence faster than ever. Social platforms amplify both the message and the messenger. But with that influence comes increased scrutiny. The enemy knows that if he can destroy the message, he'll attempt to discredit the messenger. And that's why I felt this particular topic was one that needed to be addressed on tonight's episode of the Leadership Academy, which is safeguarding your ministry. So don't let your good be spoken evil of. And joining me for this discussion is none other than the pastor of the fastest growing church in Texas, my friend and my brother, Pastor Jason Earls of North Garland Baptist Fellowship. So I want to give a warm welcome to the Leadership Academy, my brother, Pastor Jason Earls. What up? What's up, baby? What's up?
What's up, baby? I'm good to be here, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, boy.
Academy.
Boy,
Yes,
I miss you like cook food, boy.
Brother, listen, dude. My life has not been the same since you come into my life, and my life has not been the same since I got busy.
I know that's right.
That's how not us being able to chop it up for hours every week, bro.
Man, people don't know, man, the divine appointment. When we talk about divine appointments, people just do not realize how serious that is. And I don't think that of all the ones that I've had, there has been one more impactful than the one the day I met you on a podcast on the Ox Show. I couldn't even see you. Yeah. I just heard your voice, man. And me and you just started kicking it. Like I said, we were on the phone line talking to each other, man. And it was like, bro. And we just started vibing out. And it was like, yo, man, he cool as a fan. And we started talking, man, and figured out we went to the same school and basically just passed each other coming in and out. You know, the same year. I came out in the spring, you came in the fall, and we just missed each other. And man, and knew all the same people, and it was like, man, that's crazy. And man, from there, we just kept kicking it, man, and got tighter and tighter. And it was like, man, before we knew it, man, we was brothers. And next thing you know, you on this ministry path, and I'm just like, yeah. And I told my wife one day, I said, man, who would have known just by sowing a seed of support what I would reap out of that?
Brother.
I said, man, that thing has blown my mind 1,000 times over.
And very few people get to see their seeds come back 10,000 fold, bro. Like that's what we see through this relationship, bro.
Man. And you're exactly right with that, man, because it is so crazy. Because I told my wife, I said, man, I could have just put a check in the mail, said, man, I'm going to sow a seed into this joker. But I was like, I told him, I said, if you get installed at this church, I said, I'm going to fly out and be there for the installation. And man, just by obeying God, I said, man, the Lord has given me literally a new set of parents. My kids done got a new set of grandparents. I done got a new brother, 2 new brothers, sisters. I done got nieces, nephews. I done got an entire family out of this, literally. And when I say literally, people do not understand literally. I mean, literally. I mean, man, we amping up to get ready to go to the family reunion next month. Folks just don't even know. I'm just like, yeah, they don't even understand the level Man, and I was like, bruh,
And then
this is unreal.
And watching you come into my parents' life, it's like, man, I'm watching them reap what they've sown in terms of being that surrogate son and daughter to other people. Like, man, it's like what the love that they gave when we were growing up, just watching them, how they became close family to their friends, and we would go to family reunions, and it was stuff I'd never seen before. And now you are doing the same thing, the same love that my parents gave to so many others. You are giving back to them, bro. It's like, it's insane to watch, bro.
Man, this is some stuff, man. I didn't even know the Lord could do. It's like, you know, he can do everything, but it was like, bruh, I would have never known to ask for this because I didn't know this was possible. I didn't even know this was on the menu. I couldn't have ordered this if I tried because I didn't even know this was on the menu. This some of that stuff. Yeah. The chef just bought you something about, try this, because you didn't even know this was on the menu. I didn't even know this was available. I was like, bruh, for real, I really got a whole new mama and daddy. How that work?
Yeah,
man, this is insane. But like I said, man, this is some of the most blessed stuff. And the crazy thing is, like you said, it happened at such a time, and God's timing is so perfect because I know how tight you are with your family.
Yeah.
And you stepping into this role of ministry, and I know the requirements and the pull that it has on you. And so I know the withdrawal that your parents went through.
Yeah.
Because what you had to pull away because of what it cost you in this first few years. Yeah. And I was able to step in and fill that void in their life. Yep, and absolutely. So, like you said, and it was, man, the perfection of God, because we had just lost Steph's mom and dad. So my kids, my wife had lost their parents. I had just lost my mom. My kids had lost their grandparents. And then, like I said, when you stepped into ministry, your mom and dad were going into a withdrawal. So we were filling a void in their life, and they were filling a void in our life. So like I said, God's provision is so powerful. I was just like, man, this is something that nobody could have ever seen coming. And It's so perfect, man. And so that's why I said God is just so amazing. But like I said, this whole relationship, man, and I just love it, man. I love you all. And man, I'm just so excited about everything that God has been doing, man. But I'm excited about today, man. To just get to see you and get to spend some time with you, and to see you at this level, because I've been watching what the ministry is doing, man. And I told you from the first day I was out there, I said, boy, you just stepped into a powder keg. I said, boy, you walked into a room of gunpowder and gasoline fumes. And I said, and you got matches falling out your pocket. I said, it's about to happen.
Dude, man, can you, one guy, I was sitting in church Sunday, man, and one guy was, asked, how you doing, man? I said, man, being a part of what God is doing here, it's like, I don't know, for anybody who first rode a dirt bike or a motorcycle, it's just like, man, there's a moment before you fall off the first time where you squeeze that throttle, bro, and that thing takes off, and there's this moment where you like, crap, I ain't never gone this fast before. It's like,
you just trying to hold on.
Dude, that's what pastoring is like for me right now. It's just like, whoa. Like, it's powder keg with matches falling out my pocket. It's, whoa. It's like thinking that I was going to ride a bike and I stepped inside of a fighter jet.
Yes. And I saw it. That day I walked in, and I told you, I said, man, get ready. I said, get ready. I said, because it's about to happen. It's about to happen. I said, I have never seen God put somebody in such a perfect position before. I said, you are so poised for growth. I said, it's about to happen. I said, it's going to happen before you know it. And it was what, in less than 6 months, y'all were already going to 3 services. I said, y'all were already building. I was like, bro, this is ridiculous. I said, you can't script this. You can't script this.
You know, it's funny, man, when we went into the new space, and I was like, all right, I want us to celebrate being in one service together. Let's just do this for 4 weeks. And dude, 4 weeks happened. And to be honest, I really wasn't ready to go back to multiple services, bro. I just was like, let's just keep it. But the integrity of what the Lord said to me meant that we had to go back to multiple services. And I was like, man, but we got enough space to accommodate, more than 80% of the people, and it's like, do you trust me or not? And dude, so we went back, and now the first service is bigger than what the second service was. Yo, we made room for more, and now the room is filling up again, bro.
Yes. I told you, man. He knows, man. He already had a plan for it, and it's crazy because God is doing a thing, man. He's calling it in, man. He's calling them in. And he's using you guys. And that's the reason why I wanted to talk about this particular subject today, and I wanted to talk with you about it particularly because I see this kind of work happening all over the place. And I see so many young pastors that he's doing this great work with. And I'm so proud of the work that's happening with these young pastors because I don't think even they understand how blessed they are to be a part of the generation that they're in.
Yeah.
I think they may even take for granted that it's happening this way because they are a part of the generation that has these tools that we didn't have starting off. I've been doing this for 22 years. And 22 years, my first Sunday, God told me, and I talked about this in the last Leadership Academy, God literally sent me home and made me tear up my stereo system. I had to go and take the dual deck component out of my stereo system and wire it into the pulpit, into the sound system. Dual deck cassettes, which most young folk don't even know what it is, but I had to take my cassette deck and wire it into the PA system so that we could record the messages. And I had to order a tape duplicator from Kingdom Tapes, a company I don't even think exists anymore, so that we could get the message out. And that's how we had to get the message out. I'm like, man, y'all got TikToks, Instagram, all of this stuff. And I'm like, y'all got people live streaming services, everybody in services recording something and getting it out. And it's like you said, powder keg. It's blowing up organically. And I had to go out here and trudge and do this. And so it's like I don't even think they recognize how easy it is for them to grow. And growth is happening because God wants his word out. He said, take the gospel into all the world. And so it's happening so organically. And so because of that, they're seeing, especially if you're sold out to the Lord and you're faithful, growth is going to happen because if he called you, he already put all the tools in place for it to happen. One of the first lessons I taught was God doesn't need you. He just chose you. And so if he put you there, trust me, it's going to happen. Don't be sweating trying to figure out how I'm going to make this thing grow. This is God's thing. He going to grow it. He know how to do that. He going to add the increase. The scriptures say that. And so increase is happening. But I think the thing is, so many of them are not aware that the enemy is sitting back watching this. And he's plotting and scheming because he's waiting for just the right moment. He coming because he's waiting. It's not dangerous to fall off a skateboard. It's dangerous to fall off a skyscraper. So he's not worried about he not worried about you falling from 3 feet. He wants you to fall from 30,000 feet. So he don't want you to fall. He don't want the jet to crash at takeoff. He's waiting for you to get to the top altitude, and so he's waiting for you to get all the way up here for you to crash. And so this is the thing, the reason why we're talking about this thing of safeguarding your ministry, because you're so caught up in trying to get up to here that you haven't buckled your seatbelt. you didn't pack a parachute because you were just ready to go. You're trying to get up here because you see up here as the place to be, but you don't realize if you're not prepared for when you get up here, the fall is what's going to kill you. And that's what I really want to talk about. And I want to talk about it with you is because one of the things that makes your ministry so unique, and I know we've talked about it before on different platforms, you in particular, you always said, because a lot of people may not know this, maybe their first time seeing you, you weren't always a pastor. You're a Christian comedian. And you did Christian comedy for years. And I mean, worldwide Christian comedy. You are very well known. All y'all got to do is Google Jason Earls. It's not Pastor Jason Earls, but Google Jason Earls. He's a very well-renowned Christian comedian. And I mean, TBE and I mean, all over the place. He well known doing this. And Jason has run from being a pastor because this isn't the lane he wanted to step in. And it's for a reason, because he saw all of the falls. He saw all of the attacks. He saw all of the things that we're talking about safeguarding from. But that's the reason why I believe he's so equipped for the ministry that God called him into, because God allowed him to see these are the things you got to be watchful of, because I'm about to put you in a place. And so now you're prepared for that. And so that's what I really wanted to talk about, because our dad is a pastor, and our dad's been pastoring 28 years. And so you got to see that life of integrity. But you also got to see a lot of people fall around him. You got to see a lot of things that were not integral. You got to see a lot of corruption on that journey of watching those 28 years. And you got to see a lot of that in all of your years of doing comedy, in all of these big ministries. You got to see a lot of back rooms. You got to see a lot of guys in ministry fall. And so these are the things that I think we got to be mindful of. And so the first thing we need to talk about is the fact of, it's important that you guard your life. In 1 Timothy chapter 3, there's a call to blamelessness. Paul, when he's mentoring young Timothy, he outlines the qualifications of leadership with a sobering clarity. This wasn't just a checklist, it was a safeguard. He says that a bishop must be blameless. See, because integrity isn't optional, it's foundational. In the public eye, one scandal can cancel decades of ministry.
Yes, sir.
And so that's really what I wanted to talk about. And so I want you to talk to me a little bit. What are some of the things that you saw growing up, and some of the things that you recognize were necessary, and even now that you recognize are so necessary? Because, like I said, everybody's seeing North Garland is blowing up. I mean, Pastor Jason Earls, comedian Jason Earls was well known, but now Pastor Jason Earls is becoming well known, and the kingdom of darkness is sitting back watching, going, yeah. So you're becoming a bigger target now. So what is it that you have to do to make sure that you don't become that target that actually gets hit?
Man, so there's this phrase that says, success doesn't change who you are, it exposes who you really are.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, so when you're successful, it doesn't change you. It really just amplifies who you really are deep down inside. So the goal is to consistently, like, Lord, make me over. Make me over. The stuff that's not like you, that's in me, that's in my heart, that will be exposed. Get rid of it.
Wow.
From early on, like, clean me with hyssop, get in the crevices. Because I remember when I first God called me to preach. Pop said this. My dad told me this. He said, Jason, preachers come a dime a dozen. For every 12 men, you got 10 preachers, bro.
Wow. Wow.
You make sure you be one with integrity.
Wow.
And so we got the dozen or the dime in my family. We got preachers at, like, distant cousins, first cousins, uncles, granddads. We've got the dime of the dozen.
Yeah.
And within my mom's side and my dad's side. And when I say the dime, you got all in between. The ones with integrity and the ones that lack integrity. So I saw the ones with integrity in the family, and I saw the ones without integrity in the family. I saw the ones with integrity in the community, and I also saw the ones without integrity within the community. And of course, in the school, we had, a high school. You go to a predominantly black high school, you got quite a few preachers' kids that are in the school as well. And you kind of watch how the different, my fellow peers who are preachers' kids maneuver. And man, I learned on, and this is what my mom taught me, man, and my dad, is that people are watching. Not that you're trying to please people, but my dad drove home this one. He was like, dude, what people watch and see with you is a witness or a testimony to the Lord. And I was like, testimony? That's when people talk and testify, talk about how God is. My dad's like, no, that is one, but your testimony is also what people see when they look at you. And what kind of testimony are you giving? So this idea that my family testifies of the goodness of the Lord means, like, for my dad really didn't want us to have the pressure of being preacher kids. So I found out that he prayed and asked God as a preacher, like, God, don't let me pastor until my kids have graduated from high school.
Wow.
Because I don't want to have the pressure. And so when I found that out, I was like, man, like, I didn't have that lot. That was not my lot. God called me to pastor and to be in the public eye when, we've got 6 kids. For those who don't know me, we've got 6 kids. And so I started pastoring, and majority of my kids were still in high school. I mean, hadn't graduated yet. Only 2 of them had graduated, I think. So for me, again, I've seen parents in ministry neglect their families. I've seen men in ministry neglect their wives and neglect their children. Now, my dad did not, and so I got it on the positive end, but I also felt it from my peers and even cousins on the negative end. It's when you got a family member who goes to jail because he lacks integrity with females, who's in the ministry, and seeing the negative traits or the collateral damage that happens. One of my this lady who became a mentor in college, because she was one of my moms and grandmoms, all of them were first ladies. And so I spent time with this first lady in college and saw the hurt and the embarrassment because her husband was messing with little kids.
Wow.
And so he went to jail, and I'm spending time. So now I'm a new preacher spending time with this older woman who's like a grandmother and able to talk about the hurt and the embarrassment because of the poor decisions that her husband made.
Man.
So you got that, and then at the same time, dude, which is, I don't understand, like, God's grace on me, God allowed me to experience a dad who made sure he avoided that thing. I remember my dad coming home talking about women who tried to trap him. My dad, my dad, he kind of get hardcore. He was like, that woman tried to talk to me in a meeting by myself and close the door. As a kid, I remember him telling my mom that. He was like, I ain't gonna meet with no woman in a closed door by myself. What kind of mess is that? Anybody can say anything. But she don't understand it, or if she did, she understood that she was trying to do something. So I like, no. And when she tried to insist the door was closed, I went and got somebody else. So I'm hearing my dad, out of frustration, talk about somebody who was trying to trap him up or who didn't understand integrity. And then from other people, I hear, man, this is what happened when somebody let their guard down.
Wow.
So that's just, I'll pause right there so we can dialogue a little bit before I get into some other stuff.
And that's important because that's why Paul emphasizes self-control.
Yeah.
Faithfulness in marriage and sound doctrine, not to impress men, but to honor God.
Yeah.
And those are the things why as men we got to ask the question, are you guarding your private life with the same intensity as you lead your public one?
Yeah.
See, we've got to be mindful about who has access to our blind spots.
Brother, and here's the real deal. So as a comedian, the comedian's job is to bring out what everybody observes and knows but don't want to address. Sometimes the preacher thinks his job is to cover up what's obvious. The comedian is going to expose what's obvious, and some preachers or ministers are trying to cover up or don't address what's obvious. What I mean by that is, so my natural stance, part of what makes me a great, decent comedian, let me say that, is because I'm going to acknowledge the obvious. If I feel like this, if I get this feeling around a certain person, female specifically, I ain't gonna try to cover it up. Like, yo, I'm gonna acknowledge, like, yo, I feel that. Wow. And as a comedian, you explore, I feel that. What is that about? What is that? What is that? That woman just walked in. I felt something. A comedian's gonna ask, did everybody else see or feel what I felt?
Yeah.
Sometimes the immature minister will feel that same thing when that same woman walks in, but try to ignore it. And then steadily may flirt or give an opportunity for that, whatever they feel, to be flamed.
Because he didn't
expose it. The Bible
expose
says, right. The Bible says make no provision for the flesh.
Yes.
So what I'm gonna do is, I'm not only not gonna make provision for the flesh, I'm gonna expose it, because I've seen firsthand what happens when you protect yourself, and I've seen firsthand what happens when you don't protect yourself.
You know, it's funny you said it. You know, when I remember when I first started pastoring, and I started pastoring in a denominational church, and so like you said, when I first started pastoring, my wife wasn't pastoring with me. So like you said, I had a traditional, she was the first lady and I was the pastor. So, you know, and so in that situation, you know, she wasn't involved in a lot of the pastoral interactions. So I saw how in a lot of those situations, they try to marginalize the wife. And I would notice how people would try, and especially women would try to, like you said, they would try to subvert that, and they would try to take advantage of that. And so one of the things God did with me, particularly, people come in, well, you look nice today, Pastor. It was almost like I had a hearing aid on. You could say that to me, and I didn't even hear it. I literally had adjusted my hearing frequency so I could not hear a compliment unless it came from my wife. People would think I was the rudest man in the world, because I could be standing there with my Versace suit on, and you tell me I look nice today, and I'd act like I ain't even hear you.
Yes, sir.
I didn't say thank you. I wouldn't say anything. Because I recognize by me acknowledging it, or giving you any indication that I enjoyed that encouraged you to bring more. And so I just shut them down.
That's good. I see. I would see. I ain't as militant as you are. So so what I always do. I like things. My wife picked this out. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. My wife confirmed that I look nice. Like I was like, you know,
my wife told me that on the way home. Yeah. You know, and it's funny because I would do that, and then other people, I would hear pastors be like, "Oh, you look nice today, Sis Johnson." I'm like, she could walk in there with a Vera Wang on and had just had her hair done by Vidal Sassoon himself, and I'm not gonna tell her.
First of all, I'm amazed that you know the names of the wigs, bro. First of all,
hey, bro, look, it's probably about dated as 112 years old, but
I would
know. Look, but my thing is, I'm like, I don't care if your husband didn't tell you look good, you'll never hear from me. My wife might tell you she like your dress, but you'll never hear me tell you, because as far as I'm concerned, I don't even see you. My wife be like, "Oh, you see such and such cut her hair?" I'm like, "Nope, I wouldn't know." Because as far as I'm concerned, I don't even see them.
Yeah. If I notice, I just tell my wife. I'm like, "You see her? She cut her hair. She look nice." If she gonna know, my wife gonna tell her. It ain't gonna be me.
Exactly. Indeed. And so that's how I would handle them. And like you said, as far as talking about having meetings with them, I'm like, nope. And see, that's one of the things where I would always do. If you want to talk to me and my wife coming. I don't care,
bro.
If you can't see us together, then then you can't see us.
Yeah, indeed. The other thing I think is important for young and older ministers to understand, especially who have children, just the responsibility of spending time with children. But let me say this first.
Yeah.
But I want to say this first. There's what I learned from being on the comedy road, and I hope my brothers and sisters who are up front can really hear this and not brush it off.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we hide behind religiosity or just the idea of the Lord's work. There is an affirmation that is earthly that we get from doing ministry. Mm-hmm. I'll say it again. There is an affirmation that we get from doing ministry, from people getting saved, from demons being cast out, from sick people getting healed. When you play a role in that, there is this
ego boost.
Positive,
call it what it is. It's an ego
endorphins. Boost. Well, even scientifically, biologically, that stuff sends endorphins to your brain.
You feel good.
It makes you feel good.
Yes.
Right? Listen, but what's funny is Jesus recognized this with the disciples when he sent the 70 out.
Yep.
And they came back and reported them. They're like, "Yo, you ain't gonna believe it. Like, listen, man, demons being cast out, people being healed." And they were super excited about all the ministry that we're doing. Mm-hmm. And Jesus' response was cold-blooded.
Yep.
He said, y'all are excited because you cast out demons. I was in heaven when he was cast out of heaven.
Yeah. He was like,
just be glad your name is written.
Yeah.
Right. That ain't nothing.
You ain't done nothing.
Right. You better be glad that your name is written in heaven.
Just be glad I know you.
Right. So what I recognize at like being on the comedy road for so long, and God having his hand on the comedy and allowing me to be pretty good at what I do, I've recognized, and I've been preaching longer than I've been doing comedy. I recognize, like, whoa, this is a little familiar.
Yep.
When things are successful. So that's kind of, so I kind of, for me, when I started preaching, like, yo, I recognize where the commonality is, and was able to really detach myself. Like, yo, and I would say, I don't preach for affirmation. If I need affirmation, comedy would do that. Even though I don't do comedy for affirmation, it's more of a calling.
There still is a flesh component involved.
Absolutely. And you better be glad I can't sing.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You just said it. And I know the point you were making with all of that is so many times we neglect our children, our spouses, for the sake of saying we're doing ministry, but we have to recognize that our family is ministry as well. And not only that, we said this on one of the previous leadership academies. Your family was your first ministry. God called you to your family first, because actually your family was the qualification for you to be able to do in-house ministry.
Come on, sir.
It's listed as a qualification. So if you neglect the ministry that he gave you first, you're unqualified for church ministry. So don't let the enemy fool you into thinking that you can your family, that you can disregard your wife and your children for the sake of the church and think that you're doing God a favor, because he said in order to actually do ministry at the church, you have to govern your household well. So at the moment you disregard your family, you have now disqualified yourself for ministry in the church.
Listen. Children don't know how to be glad when dad prioritizes. Stay with me. What I mean is, like, children want to see their dad happy. Like, they want to see their dad smiling. And so if ministry brings those endorphins and they see dad excited about that, they're going to read that. And some children will say, my dad gets happy when he's doing ministry and not with us.
Yep.
And then children will say, well, I know children, they won't articulate it like this, but I did this as a college student. I wanted to spend some time talking with my dad, but I felt like the church's needs were greater. And I didn't talk to my dad when I needed to. And then so later on I told him, I'm like, Dad, I want to talk to you for 2 weeks. But he was like, how come you ain't say nothing? And I was like, well, I knew that the church people wanted to talk to you, needed you. And I felt like that's probably more important. Dude, my dad was heartbroken.
And,
he was heartbroken. He was like, don't you ever think that what the church people got to talk to me about is more important than what you got to talk to me about.
It's so crazy. That is so crazy you say that, because even now, and I've always made the point to prioritize my children, to at least when there were times where I had to make adjustments, that I always made sure that they got harvest when they had to sow. Like if I had to take something from them, they got something back. I always tried to make sure that they understood, if you have to sow mom and dad in the ministry because somebody's marriage is in crisis and we have to go meet with them because this is a crisis situation, and now, this evening we can't just go home and have dinner and do like we normally would, and y'all got to go sit quietly in the corner of the church and do your homework and get some gummies and whatever. Then okay, when we leave, we're gonna go get something to eat. We'll go out to eat, or we're gonna do something special to reward you for your sacrifice, because we understand that when we sow, we reap. You know, we understand those things. And so we had vacations like that. They always understood that there's a sowing and reaping concept because we never wanted them to be bitter for having to give up mom and dad.
And that's honorable. Go ahead. I want to cut you off.
No. We always did that. And then we always, when we spent time with them, we made them priority. We understood, like you said, we talked with them. We made sure that they understood they're important. They had their time and those kinds of things. And we made sure our relationship with them was close. But even now as adults, we're finding out that there were times where they were feeling things. Stuff went on with other kids in the church that they didn't tell us because they felt like they shouldn't, because this was a kid at the church.
Yeah.
And it was like, they were like, well, because a kid at the church did this, they just took it because they didn't want to say nothing because it was a kid at church. I don't care. You my kid. You understand?
Right.
Because like you said, it made you mad because it's like, if you would have told me, I would have dealt with that.
Yeah, brother. So I had that example with my dad, and then one of my former pastors had a relationship with one of the U.S. presidents, and at this time, one of the U.S. president's children was in the news for a bad decision. At that time, the United States president was talking to this pastor, and as they were talking, the pastor's son called him. The pastor told the president of the United States, "Hey, I need to talk to you later. My son is calling." Got off the phone with the leader of the free world to take his son's phone call. Dude, can you imagine? I know what that did for me as a dad.
Yeah.
But can you imagine what that did to that son? Like, son, I was talking to the president, but it's about you right now.
Yeah, not the president of the Kiwanis.
Right.
Not the president of the Rotary. No, not the president of the company. No, the president.
The president of the United States of America.
Yeah, that guy. Uh-huh.
And so you see, and so man, I learned early that I gotta prioritize my family. So the church knows on this day, don't call him. Do not call him on this day.
And that's critical. That's critical that we do this. And the reason why we're telling you this, guys, is so that you understand that the devil's desire is to make a mockery of your ministry. And the way he will do so is by making a mockery of your family.
Yeah.
Because if he can make a mockery of your marriage, if he can make a mockery of your children, then he can mock God.
Yeah. See,
because I just told you the qualification for you serving in ministry is that you govern your own household well. And so yes, the first thing, see, watch this. The very concept or the colloquialism, PK, preacher's kid or pastor's kid, that's not a positive term. That's a term they use as a slur.
Yes, sir.
So when somebody says, "Oh, you're a PK," that's not something. That's not just a descriptor saying, "Oh, your dad and mom are pastors," or "Your dad and mom are preachers." No, that's trying to say, "Oh, you one of them."
Yeah.
That's a slick way of saying, "Oh, you are promiscuous," or you're worldly, or you're supposed to be holy, but you're not.
Yeah.
That's literally what they're saying. And so they're really trying to throw shade on your family because they're trying to mock God. But the Bible tells us that if we train up our children in the way that they should go, when they're old, they're not depart from it. So we're supposed to have a testimony. we're supposed to have a greater testimony than everybody else because we're training everybody else on how to raise their children.
Yo, don't make me go there, Pastor Tuck.
Go there, bub. Go there.
Because here's the thing. Here is, first God says, okay, be fruitful, multiply. We know that.
Yeah.
But the first time in the Bible where you see what God wants in terms of raising children.
Hit him.
He says, these things I commanded you today shall be on your heart, and you shall teach these diligently to your children. I'm speaking them when you sit in your house, when you're walking by the way, when they lie down, and when they rise up. We should be consistently teaching and pouring into our own children when they're going to bed, when they're waking up in the morning, when we're sitting in the house, and when we're walking by the way, going about our business. Most of us don't spend all that time to raising our kids. And
the reason why our kids won't listen to us is because they see one guy in the pulpit and somebody else at home.
Brother, there are 8,760 hours in a year.
Woo!
8,760 hours in a year. If you go to a church for 2 hours, and your child goes every single Sunday, that's only 104 hours that your kid is in church.
Yep.
Out of 8,760. Now, granted, your child ain't going to be in church that many times. Or if they are, they're not going to be being poured into for that many hours. On average, the average child in America gets poured. Let's say the Christian child in a Christian home that goes to church gets less than 80 hours of biblical instruction in a year.
Yep.
Out of 8,760. Hand sanitizer leaves more germs on your hand.
Yep.
And they say that little bit of germs is not enough to impact. So what they're saying is the biblical instruction that most of our kids get is really not enough to impact the whole, because it's being washed out and sucked up by all the other things that our kids get. That's why it's important that we as pastors and we as ministers and we as people who are biblical leaders spend time pouring into our own children.
And they must see a consistent witness.
Yes.
Because if they see one guy at church and a different guy at home,
yes, sir,
they will never listen to that guy.
Right. It ain't working for you. Why should I try it and it ain't working for you? And you give your life to it, and I don't see it working in your private world.
Yep. People, everybody who is a faithful follower, listener, who have been spent any amount of time watching my church virtual ministries, my church channel, who has spent any time listening to me, knows this one thing about me. I tell you, the motto in the Tucker household is this: we trust God. Yeah. I don't care what happens. I don't care what catastrophe shows up. I don't care what problem, how big, how small. You're going to hear one thing out of Pastor Tucker's mouth. I don't care what it is. We trust God. You can ask Karen Earls what Pastor Tucker going to say. We trust God. Anybody who knows me and has known me for any length of time knows I'm consistent with that. And my kids know. They don't care what problem they bring me. Daddy got one answer.
Yes, sir.
We trust God.
We trust God.
And that's because they know that's not just a cliche for daddy. Daddy don't worry about nothing.
That's how we live.
That's how daddy live. Daddy don't just tell you that. Daddy don't just preach that. That ain't something Daddy just say on the podcast. That ain't something that Daddy say. Daddy blood pressure stay on even.
Bro, and that's, man, we got to be men and women of integrity to like, Lord, I want you to use me as your witness to everybody, including the people who are closest to me.
Yep.
Like, man, when I started preaching before I was married, I was like, I want everybody to be able to say, that dude loves Jesus. I don't want some female to be able to say, that dude loves Jesus, but I also know what else he loved.
Exactly.
I didn't want to defame God like that. I want everybody, if you know me, behind closed doors, behind, in the deepest and the darkest of places, for you to be able to hear a word from me and be like, yep, I know that joker believes all of that.
Yep.
Because he walks it out.
And that's the thing. You know, it's so funny. This is the thing, and I'll give you 2 minutes for this disclaimer. If you got small children in the room and you don't want to operate by this principle, you might want to press mute or get them to walk out for a second. But I can tell you now, my kids will tell you at 4 years old, my youngest daughter will tell you, I killed Santa Claus.
Yeah.
I killed Santa Claus at 4 years old.
That is great.
You know why? Because God made it apparent to me right then that my children had to be able to trust my word above anything.
Yes, sir.
And so can't no lie come out of my mouth to them. They will tell you all day, Daddy don't lie about nothing. So I killed Santa Claus because I refuse to lie to my kids. That's the level of integrity I had to have in my house.
Dude, I took my kids to Salem, Alabama, right? After we saw, Salem, the movie. Yeah. And dude, we walked in the Voters' Rights Museum and they had a picture of a Ku Klux Klan. It was a mannequin with a Ku Klux Klan uniform on. And my baby girl said, Dad, is that Santa Claus? Dude, the people there would die laughing because my daughter like, dude, they're like, who's Santa Claus? That must be Santa Claus.
So yeah, that's him. That's him.
Yeah. Dude, there was an old lady that's like, that's right, baby. That's right, that's Santa Claus.
Yeah. That's why you don't want him in your house.
You don't want him in your house.
You don't want him in your house.
Yeah.
But that's the level of integrity we gotta be.
We the same way, bro. That's why we come from the same cloth. Like, man, I cannot teach my kids this stuff, these lies. Tooth Fairy. I never taught my kids about Tooth Fairy.
No.
That tooth come out, I'm like, hey, I'll buy it from you. How much you want for it?
Yeah.
I taught my kids negotiating skills.
Yeah. But see, my thing, every blessing we got come from the Lord.
Yes, sir.
They gotta be the Lord told me they gotta be able to, cause like you said, one of the things I used to do, cause I used to think it was like I used to think it was fun to play tricks on my kids, you know what I'm saying? Cause kids gullible. Yeah. They fun at that age. And until one day, my youngest daughter, I'd say something, I used to, there's a little dog in the room, playing. Yeah. And one day I did it, and my daughter was like, Daddy, you lying. And that thing cut me like a knife. And God said, what's wrong? You are?
Wow.
And when God said that to me, God said, see, you're teaching them not to trust your word. And at that moment, like I said, I killed Santa Claus, I killed the Easter Bunny, I killed everything. Everything had to die in my house because God said they need to be able to trust you more than they trust the police.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Because integrity ain't nothing worth my integrity. Because like you said, they have to be able to know. And when we teach them how to trust your word and trust God's word, it teaches them we are the representation of God in the earth to our children.
Yes, sir.
And that's how we raise up children. What did he say? Why did I make them two one flesh? Because I wanted godly offspring.
That's the joy. Come on, Malachi.
That's
Yes,
what he
sir.
said. That's what he said.
Yeah. Yes,
and so
sir.
that's why I'm telling you, you've got to safeguard your ministry, because this is the thing. This is the reason why Satan is after your marriage. He's after your children, because he's after your ministry. Because if he can make a mockery of these things, everything you say in the pulpit means nothing. The world, seminary, everybody else is trying to make you think it's all about your pulpit performance.
Think about this. Think about if we were being trained to do the ministry that we are doing now when we were 10 or 8 years old. Like in royal families, when they know that that kid is going to be a king or a queen, they start training that child day one in preschool, and like for that child to be that king or queen of royalty. If God has given us in ministry children, more than likely God wants our children. I say more like, and I say that facetiously.
Yes.
God wants our children to be kingdom builders.
Yes.
And we neglect to train the children to be kingdom builders. In fact, we would train our children to be AAU basketball players before we train them to be kingdom builders.
Woo! What did he just say?
Dude, so when our kid has showed some little promise about athletics, we give them the trainer, we put them in AAU, we put them in travel baseball, travel volleyball, so that they can become great and get that scholarship. But we won't train them up to be kingdom builders with integrity, because we have made sports and scholarships and education an idol. And so all that stuff takes precedence over us raising kingdom kids. My bad.
You exactly right. You just said it. You said it. And that's the thing. And this is us as men and women of God.
Yeah.
And we focus on the Sunday morning experience. We focus on building a church. And we focus on a performance on Sunday morning that's going to last for 45 minutes. But like you said, the kids and the wife, the folk that we have the most influence with in the world, we pour the least amount of time into. And then the very thing that we have poured all of our life, blood, and energy in trying to build, the enemy uses the very thing that we should have been pouring our energy into to destroy. Because
yes, sir.
After you have poured 15, 20, 30 years into building this monument to yourself and not Christ, if you honest. Because everybody knows your name because you're Pastor so-and-so, and this is Pastor so-and-so Ministries, and it's this big, and you're on TV, and everybody knows you all over the internet and everything else. But because you weren't pouring time in your kids, now your kid is out here in the news. Or because you weren't spending time with your wife, now some secretary got you. And now all of a sudden, this whole thing that you have built up has now come crashing down, and all of the people who were following you as an icon is gone.
I've heard more large ministry pastors or large ministry leaders in their senior years, their last days, say, I've heard more of them say, I wish I spent more time with my family. Then I have small ministry leaders say, I wish I would have spent more time with ministry and less time with family. That's when your ministry grows and your family's neglected, that always comes with great regret. But I say this also, Oswald Chambers in Spiritual Leadership says, a true spiritual leader does not use ministry as an excuse to neglect his family, neither does he use his family as an excuse to neglect ministry.
That's a good book. That's a good book.
Yeah,
That's a good book.
that's
You need to read that.
that's one quote that's impacted me tremendously. It's
Absolutely.
because like I'm just like I will drop a ball. I would drop a ministry ball for the sake of my family.
Yes.
Just I'm gonna walk ass out there. That's not gonna get done today. I gotta be with my kid. And dude, sometimes I let my kids know when I neglect some stuff with ministry. Like, you know what? I had to do this at church, but I said, forget it. I need to come be with you. I let her know that.
Yeah.
Or I'll send, or sometimes I'm on the phone, and I love doing this. I'm on the phone, I pick up my kids, and I'm in the midst of a heavy call. And I'll say, listen, man, I know this is heavy, and I really want to continue this. But my kid just got in the call, and I want to spend some time with them, or I need to spend some time with them before I get to the house.
Yep.
I'll hit you up. We'll finish it later. All right, peace. What's up, man?
Yep. And that's the way it's supposed to be. And that's the way it's supposed to be. And that's the thing we've got to recognize. We don't get this. Yeah. Paul says this in 1 Corinthians 9:27. He says, I discipline my body and I bring it into subjection, lest when I preach to others, myself should become disqualified. The last thing I want to do is sit there and do it for somebody else and miss it myself.
Yeah, right.
I don't want to sit there and help your marriage and then mine fail. Yes, help you raise your kids and then my kids hate me.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
See, you got to recognize.
Man, one of the greatest instances that I know, there's a guy, nobody would know this guy's name if I told you his name. So I won't even give his name. You wouldn't know it. Dude, he was riding around this small town on the way to he had heard about this little small city that nothing was in. And it always stuck out in his mind. One day his son was in a baseball tournament that was kind of near the city. You're talking about 6 hours away from their home. On the way, him and his son riding the car, he was like, hey man, I heard about this city. For some reason, I can't stop thinking about it. You mind if we ride by that city? So they took a detour. And he told his son, let's just pray as we ride through the city. I can't get my mind. So they rode through this small town and just prayed. Like, Lord, I can't get out of my mind. If it's something you want us to do here, show us. Bless the people, Lord. Whatever you want to do here, do it. Then, him and his son, when he think about it, he would talk to his little son about it. The son was just 7 or 8 years old. A few years later, this dude who nobody would know went down there and did a sports camp. Just a little vacation Bible school camp with the kids. And he took his son. Years later, man, it became a full-fledged ministry in this town. The son is now in his late 20s, early 30s. Dude's grown up, seeing what it's like just to have a burden and pray about it and see what his return become. This dude has become an amazing pastor of a large ministry in America, bro. Just from his dad, who nobody would know, just taking him and including him in on ministry and just having him to pray about stuff.
Wow.
That changed my life, dude.
Wow.
Now I got stuff when I got ministry ideas, I'm running ministry ideas by my kids.
Wow.
Just see what they think. Dude, my wife and I, we do this marriage and comedy deal where I do comedy and then we talk heavy about marriage. The name of the ministry came from our kids.
Wow.
We're like, hey, we want to do this thing. What y'all, pray about it. What y'all think we should call it? We want to laugh, but we want to make sure that people uphold their vows of marriage. They were like, and we were coming up with some old churchy stuff. You know how we always doing
Oh
coming up
yeah,
with stuff to
trying to
try to
be
tell me,
deep,
oh,
trying to be
godly
deep.
marriages for
Yeah.
the kingdom and laughing. And they were like, call it vow to laugh. Vow to laugh. Just call it that. We're like, yeah, okay. Now, since we've started including our kids on conversations, they want to be involved. Hey, I'm writing sermons. Hey, y'all, what sounds better? How does it sound? What y'all like about this? I'll go out of town. They'll call me. Dad, how did the sermon go? I have put together the keynote, the PowerPoint presentation. Like, yo, what you think looks better? How would you do this? And dude, they get excited because they helping Dad, and I show them that I really need them.
And now they're a part of a growing ministry, and they're going to have a part in this ministry growth because that's what God intended from the beginning.
And I told them, I said, man, hey y'all, if God calls me to pastor, I can't do it without y'all. I let them speak into it a long time. What do y'all think? Like, give me everything, because if I'm a pastor, like I can't be a pastor by myself. I'm gonna need y'all to help me. And I let them speak into it, dude. I let them pour into me. They even saw me weeping, knowing that I didn't want to do it. And I would talk to them about it, the burden, what I wanted to do, what I didn't want to be. And like my dad, like I don't want to neglect y'all. I can't do this if I'm gonna neglect y'all. I'm gonna need y'all to speak up if y'all ever feel like I'm being given too much time to the church. And saying that in front of them, telling their mama in front of them, like, hey, baby, if I'm gonna do this, if you ever feel like I'm spending too much time with the church or think it's about to get that way, say something. I'm mad I did that one because she say something. She gonna say it.
No, but that's where it's supposed to be. It's so funny.
Absolutely.
My one thing I prayed when God called me, I said, I have no problem answering the call. I said, but the one thing is, I said, I do not want to lose my family.
Yeah.
That was my one prayer. I said, I've seen these bitter pastors' wives. I said, I've seen these PKs. I said, I do not want no bitter pastor's wife. I said, I do not want a PK. And God told me, God said, that's not the way it's supposed to be. That's not the way I designed it. He said, and if you do it the way I tell you, he said, you never will.
Cast your net on the other side, boy.
Yeah.
Like, hey, don't worry about it. Everybody fishes this way. I'm telling you to put your net over there.
He said, you do it the way I tell you.
Yes, sir.
And I always tell people, he said, your ministry can wreck your marriage, and your marriage can wreck your ministry. But if you do it right, it'll bless them. We got to recognize this. And that's why this is so important that you safeguard your ministry, because you got to recognize your gift can take you places that your character can't sustain you. And that's why you've got to make sure that you do the things you're supposed to. You got to guard your witness. You got to live above reproach.
Yes, sir.
Because when your actions are pure, perceptions matter. You got to make sure that people are looking at your life. You got to make sure that you walk in a way that people can look at your life and they want what's on your life.
Yeah.
I don't think people recognize that enough. It's not what you say, it's how you live.
Yes, sir.
We have practiced, as preachers, we have practiced this thing of talking and not living. But our life is supposed to be the sermon.
Yes, sir.
And if we can get back to this place of living the life that God called us to live, preaching is easy. Preaching is the easy part.
If we could just walk worthy of the call.
Oh, say it.
A lot of us want the status of the call, and not the worthiness of the call of Jesus. We want the status of the call of ministry and not the call of Christ. Mm. Yes, sir.
Well, man, this has been awesome. I mean, I'm so blessed. I pray that y'all have gotten the power that comes with this, because like we said, this thing is not just about preaching the word, it's about embodying it. Yeah. And so you've got to safeguard your ministry, man. Make sure that you're walking this thing out in such a way, because the enemy wants to make a mockery of everything that God is building. I know it's growing fast. I know people are complimenting you, they're encouraging you, and nothing's wrong with any of that. But make sure you watch your home, watch your family, watch your character, watch your integrity, because what you're not watching is the enemy putting stumbling blocks in front of you, because he's just waiting for you to trip and fall. Yeah. And so make sure that you are safeguarding the very things that God has put in place that are actually meant to be the foundations of your ministry, what you should be standing on. But Jay, go ahead and give him the last word, man, and we're going to pray our way out.
Man, as much as the Lord is blowing up the ministry, don't think it's about you. You know, the Lord, promotion doesn't come from the east nor the west. It comes from the Lord. As much as you may have been spending on marketing, you know, and you're doing all these things and editing, dude, it's the Lord that's bringing the people to the church, not you. So relax, have fun, laugh, enjoy life, and live with integrity. Spend time with your family, man.
Amen. Well,
it ain't that complicated.
Praise God. If you've been blessed by the Leadership Academy or any other ministries on My Church Virtual Ministries, you can bless us, help us continue to do what God's called us to do by sowing a financial seed. You can use Cash App, $ My Church Channel, or you can go to our website, lovemychurch.org, and click Sow a Seed. We have all kinds of programming on the My Church Virtual Network, like Leadership Academy, Women of Worth, The Man Cave, Heart of the Pastor, Medicine for the Mind. Sunday mornings we have Victory Today with Apostles Tony and Cynthia Brazelton, The Enjoyable Life with Drs. Russell and Yavita Cash, and hopefully soon we might be having some word coming out of North Garland. I'm telling you, we got some things in the works. But I'm telling you, you can help us continue to bring the gospel all around the world right here on My Church Virtual Network. Just continue to sow a seed. But God bless you. We love you. Stay tuned for our announcements, and we'll see you again soon. God bless you. I'm Pastor Tuck. That's Pastor Jay. Peace.
Peace.
I won't let you go until you bless me. There's got to be a resolve on the inside of the church. Woo, glory.
He says, you show up and let the Lord speak to you. Glory to God.
First responsibility of leadership is in your home. And that's why it's your ministry to your spouse and your kids that matters the most.
Different from ever before. If your recovery is fresh, or if your addiction-free lifestyle.
I want to be able to rejoice in the adversities that were there.
We're seeing all of these things happen, and the sad thing is it's happening by our own decisions. You know, a lot of people deal with a lot of depression, anxiety, frustration. Just thinking back, man, you know, how long this run has been going with us, man.
That's right.
It's,
That's right.
You know. At My Church, we help people get better by teaching them how the word works, and we want to make sure there's no excuse not to get the word. It's our goal to make all of our ministries accessible on every smartphone, tablet, PC, and television connected to the internet. So whether you're a man who needs some wisdom, a woman who needs some encouragement, or a couple who needs guidance, the My Church channel has just what you need. Simply search for the My Church channel on Roku, Fire Stick, Apple TV, Google TV, and now LG TV, or visit mychurchchannel.org. You can also download the My Church on the Go app from the Apple or Google Play App Store. Constantly on the move, check out the Word at My Church podcast from your favorite podcast platform. Or simply download the Word at My Church skill from your Alexa-enabled device. But whatever you do, make sure you stay connected. See you soon.